Greetings and welcome to this Trapcode TAO session. Now we've made a few real objects in the last few tutorials. We've made a planet like Saturn, we've made an iPhone clone, so now we're gonna have fun making some crazy abstract twisted rope scene. So let's see how we're gonna do that and try to have the most fun we can doing it. So I'm gonna create a new project. And I'm gonna start off by creating a new solid, a new composition, which I'm going to call TAO ropes. And we're gonna work in the standard HD, full HD 180p. So let's create a new solid. Control Y, call this one TAO, and make it to the comp size. And we're gonna apply TAO. Now we're not gonna use the generated path, so let's check it off. And let's start off by just creating a new solid, which we're going to call temp, because we can get rid of it without any regrets. So let's make this one 100 by 100. So that will make a small solid in the center of our composition here. And we're gonna select our ellipse tool here and simply double click, so that will make a perfect circle here. And I'm gonna click on this little triangle here, and I'm gonna select the mask path. I'm gonna hit Control C to copy it, and I'm gonna keep that on my clipboard. Turn this off because I don't need it. Let's hit Control Shift Alt L to summon ourselves a new light, which we're going to call TAO, and make sure that it's a spotlight. We can also set default values on the radius and on the fall of distance if you have any different numbers in that. So let's click OK, and let's get in our position. So hit P to reveal that, select it, and hit Control V to paste our previously drawn path that we had on our mask. So first thing, will look kind of a little bit crazy, so let's go ahead and right click on our TAO lights, and we're gonna go into transform, auto orient, and we're gonna set that to off. Click OK. So now we have something like that, and right away we can make this repeat spheres and increase the amount of size in there, and perhaps reduce it a little bit, the size. So that's kind of what we have here, and let's reduce their size. And we're going to want to make this loop. So by default, the time data used to draw geometry with TAO when we use lights is 10 seconds. So 10 seconds is 300 frames. So we want to have that repeat up to here. So if we alt click on our stopwatch here and clicking on the little arrow here, we're going to go property and loop out type cycle. So that's gonna make it so that when it gets to this keyframe here, it's gonna repeat over and over and over up to frame 300. And one other thing that we're gonna do is we want to make sure that the amount of frames here that for the durations of those keyframes, that it's compatible with the amount of total frames that we have here, so that it can be divided by that. So 60, maybe let's put 50 here. So 50 frames, 6 times that, it will go right perfectly to the frame 300. So but I don't think that it loops with the lights, because now we have keyframes on there, and this is for duration if no keyframes. So I don't think it's going to take this into account. So to prevent that, what we're simply gonna do is we're gonna create a new null, and let's simply grab our path here, and I'm gonna copy that, or we can directly copy that, and we'll copy the expression at the same time. And let's right on frame 0, let's remove all of those from here, and it's going to tell us an error message. We can delete delete that from here, and let's paste that on. Let's first hit 4 and make sure that this null is 3D, and let's paste the position here on this null. So it's going to do the same as our light was doing, but this time it's really gonna drop geometry all the way up to the frame 300. So we have more than one loop. We have six loops. So let's increase the amount of segments here now. And yeah, one thing that we might want to do while we're at frame 0 is connect our light to our null, so it really moves around with it to create the geometry. And let's get back on our TAO here, and now we have plenty of spheres being generated. So we want to move across as we generate those spheres. So let's make another null. So Control Shift Alt Y, and this one's going to be by default at the very center. So maybe we can call this one TAO Rotator, and let's call this one TAO Move, because that's the one we'll be moving. And let's make it 3D, and let's connect our rotator to it. So now perhaps we can rotate this on the X 90 degrees, so it's facing this way. And then right when we're on frame 300, we can create a keyframe here and get back on our frame 0. And now we can drag this downwards and create some geometry along this path. So we're gonna try to perhaps make it even on both sides. So let's add, let's subtract 3000 pixels here, or I mean let's add by doing that plus 3000 right there. And now I'm gonna select both these keyframes, and I'm gonna right click and go into my keyframe assistant and time reverse those, and then I'm gonna refresh all that by hitting Control Alt front slash. And I'm only doing that so I can see what I'm doing here when I'm working on the first frame here, so I can now manually drag this upwards, or since I want the exact same amount upwards, I'm gonna simply do minus 3000 this time. So now we have kind of a rotating, spiraling path going down to up. So that is going to be our little team here, our little group. So let's make it purple, and let's create a new camera, 50mm, and let's make new null. We're gonna use this as a dolly, and let's pull back with our camera. So that's kind of what we have here. And if we pull back too much, it's gonna get out of the visibility range, so we can just stay within it if we don't want to bother with that right at this moment. So let's perhaps now increase the amount of segments. So now we get something more like of a ropey shape. And now what we can do is perhaps simply duplicate our little team here, so we have another strand of this. So let's hit Command D with all those trees selected here, and let's bring them up there, and we're gonna make it perhaps another color to have them stand out visually, so we can see that this is our second group here. And let's just pick up our TAO move number 2, and on this one, if we rotate it on Z, then we can have another like angle of rotation here. So let's say we want 3 strands and no more than that. So in a whole revolution there is 360 degrees, so we can say that 360 divided by 3 is going to give us the correct amount we want to put here if we want 3. So let's make another one, let's make a third one. So I'm going to duplicate all that once again and bring them on top, and perhaps I can now set them back to purple, so this will alternate, If we had more, it's going to be orange, so we can just have something to separate them visually here. And then we can multiply that by 2, or we can say once again like 360 degree total divided by 3, and that's once again this result, but multiplied by 2, and by setting it to 240 degrees, we're kind of gonna have this ropey pattern to mess around with here, and we can increase the amount of segments as we want, and so that's pretty cool. That's something nice we have here. If we want to, I don't know, have a like a gradient of colors on here, let's do it on one light at first. So I don't know, let's pick up some blue color perhaps, and let's make a keyframe, and let's make the second one like that, and another one perhaps like this, and let's grab back our first one, so the last one is the same as the first one, and perhaps we can also make this loop. So let's go at 50 frames, or maybe this time 100, so we have it looping this color pattern, looping 3 times on our whole 300 duration across. So let's alt click on the stopwatch here, and once again let's go into a property loop out type cycle. If we want to have the same to follow on the other, let's simply copy that and select both other lights here, and we can paste this, and I'm gonna have a nice little gradient pattern. It's something that you can have if you wish, or you can do absolutely any other way of coloring it if you want, but let's have it like that. And let's make a big group of all that. So let's create once more another null, and let's call that TAO rope 1. So that will be our main group. So let's grab all those TAO move nulls here, and we can make sure that this one is 3D and link them up to that. So this one is still like right at the perfect center, so we have one nice null here we can use to move our whole thing around, or yet we can make some rotations on here. Let me show you one thing that we can do. For example, if we grab all our moves here, and let's pick up all those keyframes here, we're at 0 on the X, but if we move it across like I don't know, 40 pixel on the X here, now we can pick up this null here that it's still at the center, and if we add some keyframes on the Y rotation, let's bring this one right at the end at frame 300 here, and I'm holding shift here to have it snap right there, and now we can rotate this around to make some kind of a rotating twisting path for our rope here. So that's pretty nice, and all 3 are gonna follow the same, so that's pretty cool. Let's have it like that. I like this. One other thing that we can do to add a little bit more variation is simply to add some wiggle there. So let's alt click on our position keyframe, and let's add some wiggle. So I don't know, let's say 0.5 times per second on a range of 120, and I really don't know what it's gonna do, but let's just compare it by simply clicking on this here to enable the expression or disable it, so we can see that's with our wiggle. We got a little bit of something more of a variation here, and there we don't have the wiggle apply, so you can mess around with those numbers here to get different result. Let's try 78. This will even more mess it up, and if we put a higher range here, it will do more of like this, but we want to keep it more or so like a ropey path. So let's try that, and let's add some nice movement to that, looping movement. And so one thing that we can do here is simply activate the loop offset to make sure that everything loops. And we're gonna open up the OAS, the offset animation sequence. I'm gonna activate that, which is a really cool feature, and by default it's using the same duration, so 10 seconds here. That's gonna be helpful for us. So now what we simply can do is add some wiggling on the world positions here, and so let's do that. Let's simply add more wiggle here. So let's make it somewhat of a small value, so maybe 0.12 across 700 pixels of amplitude, and so that's creating more variations. And let's do the same on the Y, or maybe on the Y we can have it a little bit less movement, and on the Z let's also do that. So and perhaps on the Z we can have it even more and make it a little bit faster there. So what's that gonna do? If we animate our offset property, and as long as we have it set to loop, it's gonna loop our motion to the path. So, and we don't need to have like 300 frames of that. If we want, say, our loop to be only 90 frames, so let's create a keyframe at first to set it up at 0 on the frame 0. Let's go to frame 90, and let's set that to 100, so it will stay the same, but in between there will be some animation. So let's go to the frame 89 here, so we can get to the frame just before our loop point, and we can verify this animation. I'm gonna just make it quarter res to have it preview faster, but if we animate that, then we have some looping motion. But one thing that we're getting here is that since like our wiggle is not looping, then we have some gap here, as it's not connecting where we want it to be one whole thing here. So how can we simply fix that still use our nice wiggle here? This is very nice. I greatly recommend this nice Dan Ebert expression here. So go on this side here, and we can just grab this by copying it, and that will allow us to make a looping out of our wiggle. So this will be useful for us in this situation, because we want this wiggle, we want it to be looping. So let's keep in mind those values here, 0.12 and 700s, and 700 want to keep the same, but let's paste that here, and we're going to change a few things here. So we want our thing to loop for 10 seconds, and what we had here was like 0.12 and 700. So let's do that on both other, and adjust those as we please. So let's make this one 200, and maybe let's set this one only 0.1, and I'm gonna copy this that I've pasted into my clipboard, and I'm gonna paste that here on the position Z, on the OAS world position Z, and so we're gonna have that looping on in the course of 10 seconds, which is exactly the duration of our what we're using for the duration of our generated geometry. So that means that if we play this back now, it's gonna loop, and we're not gonna have some problems, some issues here. So that's one really nice way to have some looping, nicely looping organic motion going on here, if that's what you're aiming for. So what can we let's fill the whole screen with that, and let's light it up nicely. So perhaps we can simply by repeating the one that we've created, let's see how we can perhaps fill up the whole thing. So I'm gonna go into the repeat path, and let's open our first repeater here, and let's add a few amounts of those, and let's rotate on X, or let's rotate on Z, perhaps something like that, and mess around with the world random position to offset them a little bit. So now let's see if we add more what we get, something like that. Let's, if we want to get increase that a little bit in the distance, let's increase our value here, and then maybe we can repeat this pattern as we have it through the second repeater. So let's increase the amount that we have here, and so pretty cool patterns and stuff here. We can easily get doing that. So let's do that, and let's maybe double this one. Little nice way of spreading them here, or maybe add a little bit of rotation. Some rotation here, so that's pretty cool. And you can mess around with the random size also. Let's have 4, and let's have a little bit more randomness in the position. So just simply play around with that to create a nice patterns here. And if we want to get some of the fog a different color, let's create a background. So let's make a new solid. I'm gonna make it the same size as our composition. Simply gonna add a little ramp here, and depending on what kind of color that we have here, I don't know what would look nice. Maybe some kind of dark green. It's close to blue, something like that. And let's grab this here, and let's try to make it more brownish, desaturated thing on top. And now we can go in the visibility options here, and if we grab something close there, that will make it so we pull in some of the colors from the background right from the depth of our system here. So this will determine it where our fog starts. So if I put something like 4,000 here, it's like really close to us. So I don't, if I want the first one here to be not affected by the fog, I know that I need to put a higher number than that. So not 600 but 6,000. And let's put this to, so we can find our point here. So right around this, we know this is approximately like 8,000 pixels from us, so that might be what you want or not. And also let's see what we can do here to make it a little bit nicer in terms of lightings. Let's make an ambient light, and let's select ambient, and let's select the color that's close to the one of our background, and maybe have it a touch of it in our ambient color. And I just added a little crash here, so that's adding some lights here. And let's create another light. Control Shift Alt L, and this one we're gonna make it point light. And let's try to make this one more of a warm color, maybe. And now it's perhaps gonna once again crash a little bit, but if I hit page up and page down here to refresh, now I'm gonna have this to control a point light. So let's tone down our ambient lighting. So let's get on in here and let's set that to 13 so we can see where is our light here. So let's set this to 0 and let's play around with that. So let's move it on the side here and let's pull it towards us. So on the Z right there, and then we can apply some general light direction here. But if we want a little bit more control on our light here, we can call this TAO Lumi, and then as long as we have it checked in our options here, TAO Lumi lights, not TAO lights, but TAO Lumi lights, that's going to allow us to mess around with the radius of our light here. So let's get this closer to our system here. So let's say 3000. Let's have some backlight here, and let's bring closer around there maybe, and let's try to find a point where we're close to our object here with our light. So right around this point here. So that's adding some nice light bleeds on our structure here, and we can change the radius for our light here. So maybe now it's a little bit too close. I can move it towards the left a little bit, and let's have another one. So I'm gonna hit page up, page down, and this one, let's have it far on this side here maybe, and way back there. So where's that light now? It's this one. Let's not grab any of the axis, but our light object here, and let's move it around so we can see what's happening. And at this point, perhaps if we want a faster response, we can temporarily reduce our size to 3 and also reduce the amount of segments. That's pretty cool. And then as we move our light around, we'll get a more faster response. So when I'm holding shift here, I can move it further across. So it's up to you to decide how you want to light it. Of course, keeping in mind that you can always add hints of colors there to get nice details here. And then let's get back in our general material settings. In our let's close down the offset, let's close down the repeat, and perhaps we can increase the ambient back on now. And perhaps we can also activate the light fall off. And let's make this real big so we can control how gradual it occurs there. So many nice ways to add nice touches of lighting there. Let's make this pink. See what it. Maybe not. Maybe something more close to the greenish tones, depending on what you're aiming for here. That's pretty cool. And remember that since we've set it up to loop, it's always going to be looping. Let's test it. I'm going to RAM preview it. And oh shit, it's kind of hardcore now. And we have our nice flowing movement. Always looping. And of course, if we want that to a longer duration, we can bring this further here. So see that we're using 300 frames for our path geometry, but we can still bring this 300 frames down to 90 frames only to offset our animations. So in this case, time is kind of relative. It's kind of Einstein was it's a good example of Einstein time relativity, because the 300 frame duration has something to do with the fact that we're having it on 90 frames here, but that means that we can have 300 frames to generate our geometry, but still play that 300 frames back within 90 frames if we have our offset going from 0 to 100, and if we have the loop set here, if we have the loop offset. So that's pretty cool. And if we want to have different kinds of movement here, and now the movement kind of looks different because we have less segments in it, but if we add more, let's try that. So that's pretty cool, and you can always move your camera around in there, zoom in, rotate around. And it's previewing fairly fast. Alright, so that's about all I have to show you for today. I'm gonna put those files available in the description below. So as always, thank you for watching, and if you liked this little Trapcode TAO session / tutorial, I have plenty of more. You can go watch and subscribe to my channel and get to see all of them. So thank you very much. See you next time.